The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody. This is on Strategy Essentials for Project Managers. And the goal of this presentation is to help bridge the gap between project management and strategy. And the second goal is to help project managers become more strategy savvy. The basis for this presentation, we have several experiences that come to play in this. We also have a new course that's just been developed called Strategy Essentials for Project Managers. That's a one-day course. It'll start its sequence in Raleigh, North Carolina next month. And you can go on our website and get some information about that course. We have a lot of experience worldwide with many organizations in training and consulting, a lot with training and strategy and balanced scorecards, performance measurement, and project management. We also have experience with the body of knowledge and the certification exam process and training by virtue of being registered education providers for both the Association for Strategic Planning and the Project Management Institute. We also have some experience as international thought leaders with keynote speaking and workshops and training, and now in several languages: English, Arabic, Spanish, French, and Vietnamese. I'm Howard Rome, and today I'll be joined by Wes Balakian, and we'll give you a little bit of our background a little later once we get into the presentation a little more. By virtue of background, the history on strategy and implementation is not as good as we like. The performance is not as good as we like. There's a gap. Some PMI recent surveys dealt with this. 59% of senior executives say their organizations struggle to bridge this gap. And another survey, 56% of strategic initiatives are successful, less than 60%. And I think most telling is that only 9% of the companies surveyed are rated excellent at strategy execution. This presentation is going to be recorded, and we will share it with you on a link at the end of the presentation. We'll send that link to your email address that you signed up with. So let's take a look at how do we become more strategy savvy as project managers. We've boiled it down to 5 essentials, and the first one is the ability to think strategically and make a contribution to strategic discussions in your organization. Second, to be able to select and help prioritize projects and portfolios of projects based on their contribution to your organization's strategy. Third, aligning project performance to organization strategy, mission, and vision, and also help align employees to organization strategy at the same time. Fourth, draw a distinction between strategic initiatives and operational projects. And then last but not least is to measure what matters, measure the important stuff. And we're going to talk about each of these 5 savvy elements in the rest of the presentation. Based on Wes's and my decades of experience worldwide with organizations, we can tell you that becoming more strategic is a really good career move. We're going to do a few poll questions as part of the workshop today, or the webinar today. So if you want to get your smartphone or tablet, computer, and go to menti, menti.com and enter code 26863, you'll be part of the polling survey that we're going to do here in a few minutes. I'm Howard Rome, and I'm going to do the strategy part of the presentation. I have worked for over 40 years as a consultant and an adjunct professor, and as a manager and executive, an author, and a systems developer. My background is, my education is in engineering, and my experience is with both the training and the consulting side, with government, with nonprofits, with government agencies, with business and industry. So let's talk about strategy. We'll start with a poll question. What is strategy? There's a lot of different definitions on what is strategy, and so what I want to do is open up the poll and see what your answers are. We have 4 or 5 choices: what we're working on, our collection of activities, our strategic plan, assumptions that we make about the future, a path forward, and none of the above, not sure. We'll wait a few more seconds. Most of you are selecting a path forward. That's very consistent with what we found with the last time we did this poll at the North Carolina PMI chapter meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina, a couple of months ago. A path forward received 63% of the vote. Thank you. So what is strategy? There's a lot of different definitions, and one of the things that those of you who are in this field know, there is not universal truth when it comes to what these terms mean. Folks have different definitions for goals and objectives and mission and vision and strategy and so on. And a tip that we've learned over the years of working with different organizations is to make sure that you agree on words right up front. If my goal is your objective, we already have a problem in the first conversation that we're having. So one of the lessons learned is create a dictionary and then stick to it as you're building your strategy and management systems that come about as a result of that. So we like this definition of positioning choices. Making choices are important. It's a path. And the actions that are taken, the planning part, to move an organization from point A to point B. There's many different ways of getting to point B. And so strategy is about making a choice from options that are available to you. It's not quite that simple, though, is it? If you think about strategy at a high level, there's other things that go on at the same time. We like to differentiate between the strategic thinking, strategic planning, and then strategy execution as parts, important parts of the whole process of creating a strategy and executing it. Strategic thinking is really a process of discovery. We have found dealing with assumptions and scenarios and competitive forces, external environment, how we fit innovation into our planning, our internal environment, the assessments that we do, and the customer value proposition, identifying who our customers are and what do they need of us, or our stakeholders, customers and stakeholders. Strategic planning to us is more about storytelling. It's about sharing the strategy and clearly communicating what the intent is to get the organization from point A to point B. So it deals with things like mission and vision and values and goals, the choices that we make as to how we're going to achieve those goals and the directions that we set for ourselves. Strategy execution is really about implementing. It's about clarity, about getting clarity about what we're trying to accomplish and what projects and portfolios of projects are going to be used to get to the strategy, to successful implementation. It's about discipline, isn't it? It's about the discipline of getting things done and getting things done in a climate of change and uncertainty. I show these as 3 links in a chain, but the reality is that this is a dynamic process. You don't stop strategic thinking and then start strategic planning and strategy implementation or execution. This is a dynamic process, and we get smarter as we go through the process of talking about options and the environment that we have to work in, and so on and so forth. A couple of examples that we have seen over the years. This is a picture from the rocket engine assembly building at what was Cape Canaveral. This goes back to a story about the National Aeronautics and Space Administration first trip to the moon with President Kennedy. And the press, reporters. As soon as that program was announced, were looking for anybody they could interview. And the story is told about a reporter ending up in the assembly building and interviewing people. One of the guys he interviewed was sweeping the floor. And he stuck a microphone in his face and asked him what his job was. And the guy thought for a minute, and he said, "My job is to help put the man on the moon safely and return him to Earth." Folks, that's how you know you've got alignment and your strategy is working, is making a difference with people and changing hearts and minds. When the guy sweeping your floor can relate to the ultimate vision and mission of the program, the goal, then you've got strategy alignment. Here's an example of when strategy is not everybody's job. This is a true quote, and this is not a Photoshop. This is a real picture of a client that we had, and the caption, "This is not my job. I draw lines. I don't remove trees." Lack of strategy alignment in that organization. So let's do another poll question. How often is strategy part of your project management? Let me switch to that poll and advance it, and then we'll go on to that question. So if you would please, how often is strategy part of your project management conversation? Almost never, sometimes if reminded, almost always, and we are strategy focused. By way of comparison with previous results on this poll question, 44% selected sometimes if reminded. So in this case, we're getting a close split between almost always and sometimes if reminded. Thank you. Almost never, interesting. That's a relatively high number. And we're strategy focused. That's a relatively low number compared to what we'd like to see. Thank you, everybody. We'll close that poll off. So strategy connects vision and mission to budgets and actions. If you think about strategy as a bridge, we start with vision and mission. We identify a strategy to achieve that vision and mission and the goals that we set for ourselves. Strategic objectives are the building blocks of a strategy, leading to the actions and to the budgets that make up the operating plans and the work that we do on a day-to-day basis. So the few slides that I have left in this part of the presentation are going to focus very much on the strategy and the strategic objectives. We like to think of strategy as having altitude. We keep looking for ways of making a strategy a little easier to understand, try and make it more practical, a little easier to implement and do. And one of the things that we came up with is this idea of strategy having altitude, and it fits in with other elements that make up a strategic planning and management system. At high altitude, we have our customers and our stakeholders and what they need. What are we capable of providing to them? So our mission is our purpose. Our vision is a picture of a successful future. Perspectives are different views of organization performance. We call them dimensions, different dimensions of organization performance. Strategy is this collection at mid-altitude, a set of strategic themes or pillars of excellence, if you will. Focus areas, high priority focus areas is another term we've seen, and some key results. So the way to practically do this is to choose a couple of strategic themes and then develop some expected results, intended results. What are we trying to accomplish in each of those pillars of excellence? And then once we have those, we can develop strategic objectives, which are the building blocks of strategy, those themes, and then create something called a strategy map, which is a very popular tool for helping to visualize your organization's strategy. The strategy map is going to, I'll show you one in a minute here, is tell a cause-effect value creation story for your organization. We're heading down in altitude now. Once we have our strategic objectives identified, we can put on performance measures and targets around our strategy and start tracking our progress toward our goals. Second, down at the bottom, but just as important as strategy, are the strategic initiatives that come out of the thinking process from the strategy map and the strategic objectives. So we're defining strategic initiatives as enterprise-wide, high priority, large impact on the organization, the projects and the action plans that are used to drive results to get to the strategy. So one of the tools we use to help us develop strategy is something called a strategy canvas or a strategy profile. This is an example from an airline looking at some of the market differentiators when Southwest was moving from a small regional airline to an international player in the airline industry. They looked at the differentiators that made them different or the same as other airlines and looked for their blue ocean. In other words, what are the things that they can work on that other airlines aren't, so that they differentiate themselves and find their blue ocean market space. Over on the right-hand side, you see friendly service and turnaround time. There is a story around the case study here about how Southwest Airlines determined that turnaround time was one of the critical success factors for growing the airline. And instead of benchmarking themselves against competitors who they didn't think were very good at it, they benchmarked themselves against a pit crew, a racing pit crew, to learn how people work together in a team and how by singularly focusing on one part of a process, you can dramatically improve the turnaround time of that process. You can see that the emphasis on many of the differentiators is much different for Southwest than it was for the combination of the other major carriers at the time. Here's another tool that we like to use when we talk about strategy and project management. This is a strategy map. We've identified at the top a strategic result for this particular company, a leading innovator of multimedia productions and products. The perspectives that I talked about earlier, one of those critical elements of strategy. In this case, there are four: financial through the eyes of the owners of the business, customer through the eyes of our customers, process through the eyes of internal business processes, and organizational capacity, which would include the human capital part of it, the tools and technology part of it, the governance part of it, and the infrastructure part of the organization. The logic of a strategy map is that if we can make improvements in our organization capacity, our capabilities, if you will, as an organization to perform, we'll be able to improve processes, which are a direct result of the work that we do in organizational capacity. As a result of improving process efficiency, we'll be able to better meet customer needs and satisfy and retain our customers, leading to improved financial results. When you build one of these, it takes some time, it takes the right people in the room, it takes some good facilitation to get to a simple visual representation of customer value, of the organization's value to produce and meet customer needs with satisfaction and profitably. The ovals are objectives, strategic objectives. They're continuous improvement activities designed to continue to get better at this as we go up the line. The story can be told reading from bottom to up using if-then logic, or from top down using, what do we have to do to, for example, increase profits? We have to increase revenue and lower production costs. If I were showing you one of these for a government or nonprofit strategy map, I would switch the top two perspectives. In business and industry, financial is the end of the value chain through the owners of the company. If it's a nonprofit or a government agency, it's through the eyes of stakeholders. Could be citizens, could be members of an association, could be a nation state, could be a United Nations. It's through a different set of eyes. So the value proposition is different. And that's why we switch those perspectives when we build these strategy management systems. Notice down at the bottom, this client put improved project management expertise as one of the strategic objectives. In other words, a direct relationship between project management, getting better at that, and being able to improve our processes, to make customers more satisfied, to improve our financial results. This is an example of how we can build closer relationships, minimize the gap between project management and strategy, is to look for ways how project management can play a role in continuous improvement in building organizational capacity and capability. Another thing that's important for the project manager is to understand that there are different types of measures for different types of purposes, and that they all help in measuring the progress toward goals. Strategic measures look at those four perspectives, look at the objectives in those four perspectives that we just viewed on the strategy map. There's also operational measures that look at efficiency and output and quality and timeliness. And project measures, we're interested in schedule and resource adherence and the risk of our projects not succeeding. Also, scope and scope creep are important. PMP measures. Employee measures are important. We want to look at human behavior, look at human performance, and so are risk measures, safety and economic security, and how those measures fit into our scenario planning and fit into the operations of our business units. When we build a management system and a measurement system, we look for different places to put our performance stethoscopes so that we can pull performance measures from these different places and put them into visual displays for management and other employees to use and to learn. You know, the whole idea around performance measurement is to use the performance data to generate performance information, to generate business intelligence. So the way that we do that is by picking and choosing what's important and making sure that all employees have access to performance information, not just to executives or managers in the C-level. Putting it all together and telling a story is what strategic planning is about. This is an example of a one-page strategic plan where the vision and the mission and the strategic themes, in this case 3 of them, the associated strategic results, written in end-state results-oriented language to tell a story about how we're going to measure our success with international growth, operational excellence, and energy leadership. This is for one of the large energy companies. The strategy map is over here on the left. It's a different strategy map than the one for the multimedia company that I showed you earlier because it's a different value proposition. You can't just take the strategy map of somebody else and copy the objectives. It doesn't work like that. This strategy map is built around the uniqueness of your organization and the people who are in the organization and those differentiators that you choose to make up your strategy. So it is a unique picture of the values creation strategy for your organization. When we build one of these, it's a hypothesis. You know, it's sort of our best estimate of how things work with the smartest people in the room. That's why it's really important, the folks who you get involved to build one of these strategy maps. You want to make sure that you don't do it by organization chart. It's much more about what do people know, and then make sure you get some good facilitation, folks who can manage the voices in the room to help you create a picture like this. The strategic projects or strategic initiatives are tied to the objectives within the perspective swim lanes. This is a selection process where we prioritize, we identify, we make hard choices about what should be funded first. And this is a way of helping to influence and impact the decisions that go around budget formulation with regard to what should we be spending our money on. Organizations that take this to the highest level identify a set of what I call the A-list strategic initiatives, something around a dozen, maybe 8 to 16. Those high-level, high-energy, enterprise-wide, must-do projects that will help move the needle on performance within those individual objectives. And because the objectives are directly linked to the mission and vision and the strategic themes, we have line of sight between the projects that we're working on and the strategy that we are implementing to achieve the goals and the results that we want to get to our vision. So to wrap up the strategy part of this, why is it important? Why is it important for project managers? Thinking about strategy, learning about strategy, talking about strategy helps align an organization. It helps clarify the communications around what we're trying to accomplish and how we're going to measure success when we see it. Strategy helps with the selection and prioritization of what we should be working on, how we should focus our energy. It helps with what we should measure rather than measuring all the easy stuff. It's a way of differentiating between the stuff that we have to measure and the stuff that we could measure. It also builds accountability, increased individual accountability and collective accountability through the strategy map when we set objective owners for those objectives and build accountability throughout the organization. And it also helps with changing hearts and minds with the transformation that all companies, all organizations are going through in the 21st century. So our picture of where strategy fits, it's a mid-level here between vision and mission and corporate values. Strategy is our path and a plan for getting to point B. And that devolves into business unit operations, strategic operating plans, to implement the strategy, and finally right down to individuals and employees that help them understand how they fit in, and most importantly, how what they do matters to the overall success of the organization. Initiatives play a role in every one of these levels. Strategic initiatives tied to strategy, operational projects tied to business unit and operations, and then local or more tactical projects tied to individual and teams. With that, I will turn it over to Wes Balakian to talk a little bit about practical project management and strategy. Wes?
Yep. Thank you very much, Howard. I appreciate it, and great introduction there. There's certainly some things there that I'm going to cover. You'll see it from a little different perspective, and as you can see from my background, I'm a 25-year veteran in the project management world. I've authored 8 books on the subject of project management. I've been an international speaker and consultant for many, many years, and so on and so forth. The rest of it you can read. So that's a little bit about me, but I would like to also remind you before we move to the next slide that we've got another couple of questions coming up, so keep your Menti site open. By the way, that's real-time data coming in too, so you can actually see that information as it comes up, and how the audience is responding. So a little bit of data for you there. So practical strategic project management. Let's take a look at that. As we've heard, and as we should know, whether you're a project management expert, strategy expert, or something in between, above or below, all projects support strategy, or should, within an organization. So keeping that in mind, enterprise level, at the enterprise level, and I'm starting at the top of this diagram and moving down, looking at the enterprise level, how are we supporting what our strategy is? Looking at the business units going left to right, we look at tier 1, the initiatives, A, B, and C, and then we look at tier 2, the business units, which then convert those initiatives into projects, A, B, C, D, and so on. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we understand, again, top down, I'm going from the very top down, what it is that the enterprise wants to do, meaning where they want to be in X amount of time, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 5 years, how they want to get there, at least in their vision of that, and then we create projects from that and deliver based on making sure that those projects are aligned at the enterprise level of what the strategy is that the organization wants to do. We've seen this slide earlier from Howard, and I like to use it as well. And Howard walked us through, starting at the top, mission, the vision, the perspectives, the themes, our objectives and where strategy lies. And with any good building or any good solid foundation on anything you're doing, you need a good foundation. You need a good starting point. And I look at this and work it from the top, from the bottom to the top. My perspective is that strategic initiatives, which are the projects and the actionable plans that drive results, have to be the foundation, or a good foundation, of how we're going to deliver on our performance measures, how we're going to plan our strategic objectives and themes and results. The perspectives, the vision, and the mission obviously comes, from the executive side and leadership. But in order to get to that, we have to have well-constructed, well thought out, and a good process to develop those and deliver those. And I prefer that you use some type of proven methodology, whether it be from the Project Management Institute, whether it be from EMEA, whether it be from, it doesn't matter. But you need to have a good, solid way to deliver on those initiatives. So from my perspective, this is the slide. I look at it from the bottom up, from Howard's side, the strategy side, if you will. It's from a top-down perspective, and the strategy sits in the middle. But we're all trying to get to the same thing, so it works both ways. I really like this to be able to project and articulate the value associated with delivering your projects, taking those initiatives, making sure that it's clear what it is that we're trying to achieve, which we can do using project management as a tool, as a process, okay? And that's the important thing here, is we're using that as a process to deliver that. So, okay, next question. We have a poll question. How is project management used in your organization? Not much. We know what it is. Got some answers already. Here we go. A lot. We understand it and use it. Well, then my work here is done. No, there's more. There's more. Not much, loosely. Okay. All right. So starting to change a little bit. We know what it is and use it. That's probably the answer we see the most. 5% not sure. Sometimes that number's a little bit higher. Settling in here at 36%. We know what it is. Not much. Well, the 43%, or about 50% of you, use it a lot. We understand it, use it, and it is adopted. And that's really the key to delivering strategic projects and aligning projects strategically so that you deliver the results the organization is looking for. Great poll, by the way. Love it. Okay. So what is strategic project management, or a strategic project manager? Okay. In this case, project managers who contribute to corporate strategy discussions would be a strategic project manager, but that's not the only thing. That's a component of what a strategic project manager would be. Project managers who manage projects with strategy in mind would be another component. Project managers who start with the end in mind, which, if you're a project manager, most of the time you're doing that anyway, or should be. At least have an understanding of what the end is. And project managers who put their individual projects in context with the greater good, meaning what is it that's going to help the organization succeed? Am I doing those things, or is the project adrift from that alignment? And understanding and reacting to that, and not just ignoring it. Another key component. I remember many years ago, getting into the project management world, it was very difficult, and it was very unusual for project managers to have any influence really on the project once it's been given to him or her. Over the years, I've been happy to see that has changed dramatically, and the value of project management within organizations globally has really changed, and we're not out there educating organizations on the value of project management. They understand that, and they put that value in the project manager's hand so that they can make decisions at the right time, especially when we're talking about a strategic project for the organization. So a little side story there, but I just wanted to emphasize, not least PMs who coordinate their results across departmental boundaries. So very important components of a strategic project manager. Strategy-focused project managers prioritize their initiatives, and the way they do that, or the way they should do that, or a way to do that, is to run them through a filter. Many of you, if you're in a sales organization, certainly understand this type of scenario where you're putting all these things into a filter, and through the filter, what comes out of the bottom of the filter are the really important initiatives that need to be looked at. So in this case, we're looking at an outreach program, we're looking at integration to the financials of the company, and then certification program improvements out of all those things that went into that filter. The importance of doing this is we are not focused on the 100 things that came up as a strategy initiative. More or less, we're focused on the really important things that are going to make a difference in the organization and help the organization succeed in where it wants to go. Strategy-focused project managers help support alignment. So looking at this particular slide, we're looking at the various levels, if you will, of alignment. So starting on the left side, we were looking at corporate and moving down. This may not be exactly how your organization is built or designed, but you kind of get the idea. Once the executives have decided where they want to go, it gets moved into the operating divisions. Each of those operating divisions have directors or vice presidents or whatever they're called in your organization, team leads, whatever, and then that gets moved down into the manager level, all the way down to the team level, and if you will, an example of that was the person on the shop floor at NASA that was vacuuming the floor. So, and that's where the results come out once we get it down to that level. So looking at the corporate level, you're talking about executive management. At the operation division, you're looking at business unit leaders who have to take the corporate vision and move that into their divisions, each of their individual divisions, and then those moving to the right into the organizational stakeholders of those divisions have to take those initiatives for their operating division and cascade it to their management team. Their management team then has to cascade it to their employees in order to get the results that we're looking for. And this really is just a way to show the type of alignment and what has to happen. Now you can imagine it's a very simple slide, I agree, and it's very easy to read once you kind of look at it, but the complexity of this, if you can imagine, is very high, because obviously at the corporate level, like senior executive level, they have a vision. And I don't think I'm out of line saying this. We all know it, that at that level, their concern is not how we're going to get it done. Their concern is this is what we need to do. Okay, and that's when it starts to transform right there from the corporate to the operating. That's when it becomes, how are we going to get it done? So, then it starts to get complex, because the minute you start thinking about that and then cascading it down, it starts to get even more complex. So the level of complexity from the left side, corporate, all the way down to the team side increases exponentially as you get down there. So there's a lot more to this than just saying, oh, we're just going to align our organization and everything we do is in alignment. There's more to it than that. And unfortunately, we only have an hour today, but in our one-day workshop, which is expanded to a 3-day workshop so that we can get into more detail. But I just want to say that the one-day workshop that we're having in June in Raleigh, we'll get into a lot more detail on this particular subject. As you can imagine, there's a lot more to talk about on this particular slide. We have another poll question. How well do your projects align to strategy? Since we're talking about strategy, let's take a look and see. Give us a minute or two to get some results here. Very well aligned and consistent, somewhat aligned. Numbers are moving a little, somewhat alignment. Interesting. So today we have a little bit more global audience than the the snapshot we took a few weeks ago at the North Carolina chapter. And the results, I think, are somewhat different because if I remember the results on this, there was a lot more in the blue. I don't see much, if any, alignment. Howard's got those results. I could be wrong there, but I think I saw more. And in this one, we see some alignment exists, but not consistent, and then somewhat aligned and with some consistency. Mm-hmm. But the point I think that this instant poll result shows us is that 18% of the respondents, and I know this isn't any scientific thing, and we can't, announce to the world that we've discovered some new numbers here, but you're getting to see that there's room for an opportunity here, and the opportunity is to start thinking about how we're going to take strategy and how we're going to strategically align our projects and deliver our projects with strategy in mind. Very good. Thanks for that poll, by the way, everyone. I appreciate you responding. Okay. Next, let's move to some roles and responsibilities of the Strategic Project Manager's Office. So many of us have heard of a PMO, Project Management Office. Some of you may heard of a Strategic Management Office. They can be one in the same. They could be combined, or they could be individual. So either one, I'm going to start at the left side of the screen and look at the first block in blue and talk about what the office might be thinking about: strategy execution, strategic analysis, strategic initiative portfolios, goals, and target setting. So when you contribute to strategy reviews from either one of those offices, these are some of the things that you might be doing. Why is the office in existence? Well, these are the things that we're reviewing. These are the things that we're doing analysis on, and these are the things we're looking for results on to measure how well we're doing with our strategy. Looking at the green box or the box below the top one, down to the right, managing strategy execution. And these are the things that we're going to pay attention to and review. We're going to manage our strategic resources, whether they be financial or human capital, logistics management, monitor and report on our performance. How well are we doing? How well are we not doing? Whatever that may be. Some traditional project management things here, like schedules and milestones. Are we meeting our schedules? If so, are we doing things well? If we're not meeting them, what are we doing wrong? Checking our milestones to making sure that we're hitting our milestones. And then most importantly is employee and cultural dynamics. And the reason we put that in there in order to manage the strategy execution is once you develop a new strategy and you cascade that and roll that out within the organization, one thing for sure is going to happen, and that's community transformation. New strategy is transformation within the organization. Why? Because we're doing something new. It's change. So the community needs to transform. I use that term as opposed to change management or organizational change. I just like community transformation a little bit better as a term, but that's what's happening. And one thing that we need to do is we need to manage that, make sure that everybody understands what's going on, understands the dynamics of this change, is on board with it, motivated by it, et cetera, et cetera. So strategy-focused project managers. So as a strategy-focused project managers, we help create a competitive advantage. So looking at this particular slide, if all of our competitors are pushing squares and we can push a ball, that immediately puts us in front of everybody. I couldn't think of a better way to articulate the value of creating a competitive advantage. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that our strategy, once it's defined, is being delivered, and that we stay on track with that as project, program, and portfolio managers to make sure that what we're doing is in full alignment of what the organization is doing. Could you imagine if we were not? We would end up in a big mess. Everybody's going in different directions, and I'm sure that doesn't happen in your organization, but it could if we're not careful about what we're doing. So creating a competitive advantage like this is very easy to do, even though you're a project manager or a strategy executive in your organization. You can help create this competitive advantages by alignment, and alignment is done using a good project management process. Again, something that we'll talk about more in depth in the one-day class. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about traditional project management, because I didn't want to forget that we've grown over the years in the project management space, in the project management delivery arena, and the project management theater is a little different, and the landscape is different than it has been over the past 10 years, even past 5 years for that matter, and certainly over the last 20 years. So looking at a traditional project management implementation using project management tools, and I'll just pick on this particular one for this slide. So using a typical Project Management Institute delivery model, which includes initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing, with the various process groups that are associated with each one of those process groups, processes rather, that are associated with the process groups, with specific deliverables from each one. Now, I showed this particular one because I wanted to show that in the way we look at things, we certainly believe this is a great process. We certainly believe that any and all of these processes or knowledge areas and groups are valuable and a good resource for us to use in delivery of strategy. But this particular one, you'll notice that even though it's color coded, that even some of the executing ones that are in brown are over in planning, and some of the things that are in monitoring control start in executing. And this particular client, as we do with any client, once we understand how they operate and what they do, doesn't mean you have to keep everything in its nice little column there. And we've adapted it, this particular process for our particular client, and that's the way it should be done. So being flexible, being highly adaptable, and using a process is the key. Am I advocating that we need to use all the processes? No. Am I advocating that it has to be done this way? No. What I am advocating is that you use a process. So that's the key. Couldn't talk about project management without bringing in agile project management. We certainly are a firm believer in delivering using agile for our strategy. So anything that we do from a strategy perspective, we also follow the agile methodology, where we're doing short sprints. We're using customers where they redefine if the needs are redefined, we change directions, we come back, we deliver something. If it's successful and we're ready to move forward, we incorporate that and then build on that. And then if we see some new insights coming in from the customer, or there's new ideas developed, we incorporate those as we move forward. So using agile is certainly is something that we firmly believe in, and we still use that today. So a few agile principles we've adapted for strategy and strategic planning and strategy execution for you. First, we welcome and adapt to changing strategic assumptions. I know this may be difficult for some of you to believe, but those strategic assumptions do change as the iteration process continues. Howard showed the slide earlier with the chain. I think personally, I think that's really the best way we can explain all this is everything is linked together, but the chains are not broken, and that tells me that everything goes through iterations. And sometimes And many times the iteration bleeds into the next level, and then from there you continue the iteration, and that bleeds into the next level. And then when you're done with the project, that changes your strategy. So it is a loop, and it is an iteration. Number two, work closer with customers to understand their needs and aim to deliver early, always in delivering continuous value. Iterative and tangible progress is delivered and measured frequently with continuous attention to quality and meeting our customers' needs, obviously, when we're talking about delivering, and this is using the Agile principles. Strategy is developed and executed by motivated individuals working in teams who should be trusted. Again, this is just another example of how project management has evolved over the past 5 years, and how lucky I am to have seen 20 years ago when I started in project management, how far it's come and where we are today compared to where we used to be in the world of project management and its delivery. And last but not least, focused on simplicity. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. So our agile values are responding to change over following a plan. So we wanted to make sure we brought that in.
Thank you, Wes. I'll wrap it up here with some observations over a couple of decades of working in this arena. And I started out by saying that the goal for this presentation was to help bridge the gap between project management and strategy. The higher purpose for why we do this stuff is really to create higher performing organizations that are more strategy focused is the way that we get to higher performance. And some critical success factors that we have observed for long-term success. Remember, this is a sprint, not a marathon. Our experience is that we can do the facilitation, the workshops, build the strategic plan, the management systems that come about in a matter of weeks and months. But the reality is changing hearts and minds and creating higher performance organizations is a marathon, and that takes typically a couple of years to make those kind of alignment transitions that we have been talking about so far. Some keys to success. Number one is engaged leadership. And it's not enough for the leaders to say, go build me one of these systems, or go align the organization. This really takes leaders, and I don't mean just the C-level folks here. This is engaged leadership, finding the leaders at each of the levels in the organization. I like to call them finding the different voices of the organization and getting those folks engaged so that they become the champions throughout the organization. We need more than champions at the executive level, and the key is to build those champions at the business unit and the team and employee level. Second, change management. This really is about changing hearts and minds. If you think about everything we've talked about, it's much more than a system and much more than measurements and much more than alignment. It really is changing hearts and minds. And that means overcoming resistance, identifying and motivating the right behaviors, and getting folks engaged and accountable for results to build a high-performing organization. You have to do something with the performance measures, or it's not worth tracking them, right? So we're looking at how can we influence, how can we impact, how can we inform decision-making with performance information, going to a more fact-based decision-making model. Another element is strong project management discipline, which is why we put this webinar together, linking strategy and project management and helping to create a unified framework rather than two separate frameworks. I talked about this being a marathon. You have to make a commitment to be in this for the long term and not just treat it as a one-off. And finally, incentivizing the desired behaviors that we want ties back to the fact that change management needs to be built into the planning and the system that you're developing from day one. This is not the kind of thing where you can work on performance measurement and strategy and project management, and then turn it over to the HR department and expect them to deal with the changing hearts and minds. It didn't work very well 20 years ago. It doesn't work that way at all today. So if you're going to take on an assignment like this of building higher performance organization, recognize that you want to build the change management and right from the first day. A little bit about us. We use a 9 Steps to Success framework. It was developed about 20 years ago. And what it does is connect the dots. We're the practical folks who like to connect the dots and make strategy and project management simple and easy to implement, easy to do, and exciting and fun to do. It starts with an assessment step and goes through several steps to get to the strategic initiative, step 6 that we talked about, and then rolling out a high performance system as a result of that. It takes a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, depending on the size of the organization to do that. Performance analysis and then cascading or alignment and program evaluation round out the 9 steps of the 9-step framework. Simply put, we help organizations formulate strategy, communicate it. We help with aligning employees and the day-to-day work that they do to vision and strategy. We help with prioritizing and managing not just projects and portfolios, but the services, products, and resources that make up the operating business units. And finally, we help with measuring and analyzing and improving performance. We're the strategy management group. We fly 3 flags: the Balanced Scorecard Institute, the strategy management group, which includes the strategy things we've talked about today and the project management things we've talked about. And finally, kp.org, which is a new organization we've created to focus on performance measurement, KPI training, and performance analysis and results. The training that Wes talked about, it starts as a 1-day strategy essentials for project management course. We also have a 3-day version, an expanded version of the course that we will be offering shortly. We've offered it in the past for private clients, and we're going to offer it as a public course as well. Wes does PMP exam prep training. It's a 5-day boot camp. And we also do Balanced Scorecard professional certification and KPI professional certification, also 5-day boot camps, 3 days and 2 days for introduction, and then advance to get to the full certification. We certify jointly with George Washington University, the College of Professional Studies, and we have done that in multiple languages, as I mentioned earlier, and in all continents of the world now. I mentioned some references earlier. Brightline Initiative, it's got some good stuff out from PMI. Julia Sloan has some good thinking on how to think strategically. Blue Ocean Strategy, of course, famous book. We've written a book a couple of years ago called The Institute Way, which lays out the 9-step framework and is the basis for the training that we do worldwide. So to close this off, we're going to have a link to the recorded webinar and give you a copy of the presentation. We'll email that to you. If you're in a hurry, you can contact either myself or Wes Balakian, and you can reach us at the address and the phone number and the websites listed there. I think we're up at the hour. I don't know, Wes, do we have time for a question or two? I know we have still a lot of folks on the line. Maybe we can go a little bit longer than the hour if folks want to hang on for a while. Wes, do we have any questions that we can...
Yes, we do, Howard. Sorry. We got 2 questions. If we can answer them quick, we can wrap it up in 2 minutes. So I'll take the first one. How's that? Good. And then you can answer the last one and close it out. There was a question about what about a link to Scrum method? And thank you for that question. So I'll take that. I didn't intentionally leave Scrum out. I think it's important. I tried to emphasize the fact that a process is being used or a methodology is being used. I'm not really particular on which one, as long as you're using a process. So a lot more detail, a lot more information will come out on the one-day class. So the person that asked that, I'm sorry for the short answer, but we're a little bit short on time. Howard, the question for you is, today's definition of strategic thinking considered to be linked with organizational development and analysis with focus on innovative design, planning, and thinking? I gave you a long one, but would you like me to read it again, or do you have it?
No, what is the question?
Is today's definition of strategic thinking,
okay.
Yes, is it to be considered linked with organizational development? I'll just leave it at that.
You have to start with looking at the forest, I think, when it comes to the strategic thinking. If you start with the existing organization structure, I think you're starting at the wrong altitude. When we start brainstorming around scenarios and world events and markets and competitive forces and employee capabilities and capacities, I think you have to start by looking at it as sort of the pieces of the puzzle that, after we've discussed them and talked about them and gotten a little smarter about them relative to our organization, we'll be able to put the pieces together in a mosaic. And one of the pieces that comes out of the mosaic is, how should we organize ourselves? So I think the organization development question is really maybe the second or third question after we figure out what the strategy is, and how we're going to communicate that strategy, how we're going to align the organization. You can't start with a clean sheet of paper, of course, right? Unless you're a new startup. So part of that discussion, of course, is what are our current capabilities, right? Both from an innovation point of view, a technology point of view, a tools point of view, a human capital point of view. So those are all, inputs into that mixing bowl, or that funnel, if you will, that helps determine what an organization's strategy is. Certainly related. I just think to make it manageable, you have to, I like to say, chunk it up. You have to take on small chunks of things and then connect the dots later. I think Stephen Covey was right on track, right? One of the 7 habits of successful people is start with the end in mind. And that's the process that we have used to develop these techniques and tools and the logic of the way we go about doing strategic thinking and planning and project management. So, good question. Thank you, everybody. Wes, thank you.
Everyone.
Okay.
Yep, thanks, everyone.
We appreciate and follow the link and call us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help. Thank you.